Our girl is destitute.
What conspiracy theory do you have?
You're the Feyre.
I'm Feyre. He hates Tamlin. He's also a bit of a petty bitch.
And yet, she decides, let me just shoot my shot and see it. I'm like, girl.
Woo! Hey guys.
Hey, we're here.
We're here.
It's arguably, I would say, probably the most complicated 2 chapters of this fucking book, and
Dude.
man, did I fucking rage after reading them.
Bro, I can only imagine because, you know, I'm sure we've said it quite a few times, but like this is Ariel's first time doing the reread. And I think any of you, we all remember the first time of the reread. It is rough. It is rough.
Yeah.
And this really begins. Like it's been like, you know, a taste of roughness, I feel
Yeah.
like, before this. But this is really where you're like, rage. Like there's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot in this.
Well,
so yeah, in these chapters 21 and 22. I mean, I think like we talked about in the last one that we recorded, like how surprised we were with like actually like how kind of like kind we've been towards Tamlin. Like we're really trying to see all the sides and understanding his upbringing and understanding like where he's coming from, because like we also understand so much is taught. Like, you know, we talk about toxic masculinity, we talk about all this stuff, but like this I feel like we've finally gotten to the point, which I think is also very true, like within the world of like the excuse of how you've been brought up will only go so far. At the end of the day,
Precisely.
you are still like making choices. And so I think we've reached the edge, and I kind of have a feeling that pretty much here till the end of the book is gonna be a lot of Tamlin hating in the spoiler section. Like I think we're now, because like I started realizing like we're only a few chapters away from when he like sends her away, and which then means Under the Mountain is coming up soon, and we're just gonna be shitting on him during that. So I like it's starting. Friends, if you've been waiting for the hardcore piss on Tamlin, we have reached that time, my friends. Our serial squad, we are there. It is happening.
We are off to the races, but first,
we said it during the non-spoiler section, but we definitely want to put like a trigger warning out, like for we're getting into the zone of the book where we're going to be having a lot of discussions about consent, sexual assault, and all those kinds of things. And so we're just going to put a trigger warning out there. You are a serial squad, so you do know, but it's different when you hear people really pulling stuff apart. So we just want to kind of do a little warning, be gentle with yourself. Completely understand if some conversations get to a point that you just got to tap out. It's all good. We love you. We appreciate you. It's all good. But just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course. But at least before we get to that part, we get this wonderful section with Rhys.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about something because I know after our last episode, you had read ahead.
Yeah.
And you said, I'm very curious how you're going to react to some of the wording of some of these things. So I was a little nervous. I was like, uh-oh. Here's what, okay, and look, I'm gonna state up front, I am a Rhys girly. He is my number one boo. Like, I would say out of all the book boyfriends, like, of all the series I've read, like Mama Mass and otherwise, he's my number one. So
I think Rhys is the only one that I could actually like see myself with.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Rowan, but that's a whole other Corryn situation that will, you know,
I would love to believe I could be with Xaden Ryerson, but I
think I would slap him upside the head majority of the time and be like, fucking get over it, figure it out. Like
I also would fall off a dragon for sure. So although I guess Violet figured out a way not to. So but anyway, different series.
Anywho.
Okay, here's what I have to say, because yes, there was a lot of language like about her being scared.
Wasn't there a bit more than you like expected?
Way more than I expected.
Yeah. That's all I pretty much meant was like, I think there's
Oh,
gonna
I
be
know
some more
that's what you meant.
language than you expect. Yeah.
Here's what I'm gonna say to it.
I'm so excited. Oh, I love it. I love it. How are you gonna spin this, baby girl?
Oh,
How are you
and
gonna do it?
I was like, crucify me if you need to. I'll use a couple examples. So on page 190, she says, in regards to Rhys, I was terrified of him, but I wasn't about to let him know. She also said, I never seen anyone so handsome and had never had so many warning bells peeled in my head because of it. To which I say, no. Of course, these could be like legitimate fear triggers, right? Like, let's not forget he is the High Lord of the Night Court. On the other hand, we know we know they're mates, right? And this is my own experience, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I know she's not falling in love with Rhys yet, but she's meeting him. But they're like, let me tell you, I remember like when I was falling in love with David, I was terrified, right?
Okay.
I was like, because I mean, mind you, I had just been hurt, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's really common for people to be scared when they are falling in love, or not even falling in love, because at this point, it's like, she knows she's falling for Tamlin,
Yeah.
right? And so I could see it being a very scary thing of like, wait, I'm falling for this guy who's providing me security and safety and all sorts of stuff, and I'm attracted to this guy too. Uh-oh, what does that mean? So I'm not saying that is what it is. I'm just putting it out there that it's a possibility.
I mean, actually, like, I don't wildly disagree with you. Like,
Yeah.
I do think there is a level here of she is clearly struck by her attraction to him.
Yeah.
And it's like, because it's just the amount of times that obviously, like, it's the first time we're meeting a character. So, like, she wants to give us a lot of description, but like the amount of times that she basically says the same thing of like, he is so beautiful, I want to run away. Like the amount of times that this idea sentence, like, struck kind of thing pops up next to each other in this like beginning, this little whole portion of her and Rhys.
Yes.
Is pretty wild because like it happens like 3 or 4 times and they're always kind of like right next to each other.
Yeah,
right?
that's a great point. And like, thank you so much because like at first I'm like, am I just like trying to shove this in here because I love Rhys? But like there's a degree obviously, but I think you pointing out the actual sentence structure of this, like that is a clue in and of itself. And mind you, I think it could be both, right? Like,
yes,
I think she is scared of the power he clearly has because, it makes sense. She's seen what Tamlin's power can do, right? Like, Tamlin's kind of a killing machine.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even know what Rhys's powers are yet. She just feels the power emanating from him. And like, the fact that she can feel that, and she doesn't even know he's a High Lord yet, right?
She doesn't.
Let alone the most powerful High Lord in the history of Prythian. So I'm sure that is a factor for sure. But I couldn't help but wonder, like, girl, you just afraid because you're catching feels again in like also a very short time span. Like, she's only been with Tamlin for like maybe like a month or two. I
think it's like been a couple months because when we get to the next chapter, when she like talks about like that whole line about the painting, she's like, what I've been doing for these last few months. So I'm gonna assume in my mind it's like, well, because also so this is spring.
Mm-hmm.
She came to it like winter.
Yeah, so like I'm gonna say 3-ish.
Yeah, like 3 months, and one could argue too that like they're not even really like with each other yet.
No, but there is still this like
there's a pull.
I think there's a pull, but also I feel she's like feeling almost like an obligation. Like if you've ever been also like not for nothing, if you've ever been with someone, whether in an official capacity or like a casual capacity, and then started catching feelings for someone else, like that is a really scary feeling.
Yeah, it's a weird moment.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of like, oh, I was kind of starting to create like a future plan on this one end. And now this other thing kind of comes
derailed
in, And so, I mean, I don't think you're grasping too hard.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I do think though, when she kind of says the line of like, did I trade 3 monsters for 1?
Yes.
And, I do think like that's like a true kind of like fear.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is like Well, even when like the three guys like kind of attack her,
Yeah.
she doesn't like actually get like scared until it's like bad, like really, really
Right.
bad. You know, when they first
It's
start
very clear what
cornering
they're
her,
gonna
like
do.
she's like freaked out, but she's not like there. So I think also like Feyre's like level of truly being fearful
Yeah.
is kind of, it takes her a while to get there, I think maybe.
Well,
And
there's also the adrenaline rush of what just happened. And also,
exactly.
this is the first time she's interacting with Faye. I guess other than like, well, it's not. This is the first time she's interacting with Faye that are not Spring Court, other than the Naga, the Puka, and the Suriel,
Yeah,
all of whom she's scared of or supposed to be scared of.
exactly.
So she's probably assuming, yeah, all Faye outside the Spring Court are really scary.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's more of an environmental factor and maybe a little bit of her feeling his power, but then also like this internal fear of like, because we know Rhys does feel some internal pull towards her.
Yes.
He talks about that in Mist and Fury.
Yeah.
Meaning she probably does too.
Yeah.
And it's probably very confusing in this moment.
Probably
So
wildly confusing in this
Yeah.
moment. One of the things I really love though is like all this like Easter egg language of him
Yeah.
being Night Court, you know, as if he'd been molded from the night itself.
Yeah.
Or I could have sworn tendrils of star-kissed night trailed in his wake. Those are his wings. Those are his wings. Yeah.
Like, I just did the head explosion thing for those just listening, not watching. But yeah, that's
I was
totally
so excited that you didn't have this quote on the outline because I was like,
Yeah.
that means baby girl hasn't seen it. And I get to be
It's
like,
a-
those are his wings. Yeah.
His little bat boy wings.
His little bat boy wings.
Ugh,
Yeah.
I love it.
Which the fact that she even sees a trail of it is interesting because he keeps those very hidden. Like there's even a lot of people, there's even a lot of Fae who haven't seen the wings. Like he keeps them
Well,
hidden.
I think this just emphasizes the mating bond. Then.
Ooh.
Like that, if she's the only one who can really see that in this capacity, I think it's, I mean, and then it plays to my point of like, I think there is this feeling she's having internally of like, I'm supposed to be, this person's important, right? But she doesn't know how, which would be scary, right? So
I also kind of love this idea of like Rhys just kind of doing like a little like he kind of does like he exposes them a little bit on purpose, just a little like
a little peep show.
Look how pretty I am. Look at my
He's such a diva.
He really is.
I love it. Like I think
this whole scene is just so good.
I don't want to speak for you, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I think as queer women,
yes,
specifically bisexual women, I think a lot of bisexual people are naturally attracted to one another because of just the fluidity. Right? And I know that's part of the reason, even though it's not canon yet, could still be, that Rhys is bisexual. My headcanon is he is.
Yeah. No.
He's flamboyant.
Yeah, he is. He puts on a fucking show. Like,
oh my god, yeah.
I am definitely either he's bisexual or he is like wildly close to it on the spectrum. You know what I mean?
Like just like, a skosh away.
Like literally the only thing that stops him is that like he doesn't really have any interest in like men, maybe.
But he like appreciates like
he appreciates
he's totally one of those dudes when other dudes hit on him, he gets like giddy.
He's like excited.
He's like, oh, I am hot, aren't I?
I mean, I am very attractive, so you're right.
And he'd be like, if I were attracted to men, I would totally hook up with you.
100%.
And it's unfortunate that I'm not.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, absolutely. No, totally. I definitely feel that. I just, he gives like bisexual king energy.
If he were the best man of a gay man, he would throw them the best gay bachelor party.
Most incredible gay bachelor party ever.
With like the hottest male stripper. Like he would. It would be just
it would be on theme. It would be on point. He'd probably get in the middle there too.
Oh my god. I mean? He'd be part of the act.
Oh, he would. Well, yeah, Because he's
Yeah.
like, that's the one thing that I think I love about all of us who love Rhys so much is that we are very aware of like kind of how self-involved,
Oh
like,
yeah.
is it self-involved or is it just like he's like kind of cocky? Maybe it's like a
You know
better
what it is?
way.
I think okay,
He
here's my take
loves
on Rhys.
himself. Well,
He well,
he
but like
gets there.
yes.
He gets there.
Yes. Yeah,
He doesn't love
yes.
himself
Yes.
right now. That's for sure.
No, he's
Yeah.
in a lot of self-hatred mode.
Mhm.
I think I think it's okay that he is cocky, like in terms of like
Yeah.
appearance and like things like that. Because at the end, like deep down, he is like one of the least selfish people in this series.
Totally.
And I
Totally.
think that's the trade-off, right? He's like, and I don't think this is even conscious. I think it's like he gets to be cocky about how hot he is and things like that. Because at the end of the day, he will be the first
Yeah.
person to put himself at the front lines to
Totally.
save. I mean, he literally he's in the middle of it right
Exactly.
now.
Yeah,
He is
absolutely.
being basically sex trafficked right
Yeah.
now to save everyone he loves and all of his people. So,
Yeah.
that's my hot take. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
a hot take, but that's my take on Rhys's cockiness.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why I said like I wouldn't want to call him self-involved because like
Yeah.
it's not. It's just he's very matter of fact about how pretty he is. He just knows that he is. And one of
Yeah.
the things that I did bring up in the spoiler-free portion, but I do think it's really still important to bring up now. I
Yeah.
love that one of the first interactions we have with him, he asks if he can escort her.
Yes. Yes.
He doesn't touch her. He puts his hand out. She says no, and he
Yep.
accepts the refusal.
The only time he touches her is when he's trying to get the other
Yeah, he
fairies
picks her
away.
up and he kind of like
Yep.
pretends that they're together. Like he
Yep.
puts his arm around her, which was
Yes.
purely out of protection. And then once
Which
they
we'll see a
leave,
lot.
the arm comes off. They
Let
get
me
their
tell you.
distance. It's like so hot to me that he's just like,
Oh,
okay, and like walks away. Like,
so hot, but also like, and I didn't think about that until you brought it up in the spoiler-free episode, and I was so glad you did because the stark
yeah,
contrast
yeah.
of consent between the very first scene with Rhys,
Yep,
and then Tamlin later in this chapter and kind of the next chapter too. Like, oof.
Well, I mean, even if you just compare like her first like real introduction to Tamlin at the
Yeah.
dinner table, where he forces her to eat,
Yeah.
and then this moment, like it's just it's stark. It's so
Day and night.
it's day and night.
Yeah,
It is.
literally.
But yeah, it's wildly different. But yeah, there's so much a part of this like conversation that if Ariel and I had like 5 hours, we would pull apart every single thing that they said back and forth to each other. But we don't have that kind of time. So
No.
really it's just I love this moment. It's a great first introduction to Rhys, and actually like from a reread perspective, I love that it's again the magic trick of this book of that he is still so very much the Rhys we love from the very beginning.
Yep.
And it's really comforting. Oh, his whole like monsters come out and like I will be let out, like God, it's so fucking hot. You're just like
I know.
"Arr!" Yeah.
It's No, okay, one thing I want to talk about before we get to the whole Tamlin of it all is when it's gonna be big.
Yeah, it's gonna be big.
The part where Lucien's explaining Cauldron
Yeah.
to Feyre. And the phrasing here I think is really important, and I have some questions. So he says, you know, when he's talking about like what we do for the crops.
Oh yeah, after
he
he
says,
throws her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah.
Fucking Lucien.
Fucking Lucien.
So funny.
So he says, we do this by conducting the Great Rite. Each of the 7 High Lords of Prythian perform this every year. Since their magic comes from the earth and returns to it at the end, it's a give and take. And this is on page 193 for reference. So I have a few questions here.
Yeah.
First off,
Yeah.
this potentially puts, and I know it's come up in the last couple episodes, this potentially puts a wrench, possibly, not entirely sure, but it potentially puts a wrench in the Gwen Tamlin daughter theory.
Right.
Because if the other High Lords participate, that could mean it's a different High Lord
Yeah.
who is her dad. Now, she does say it happened in the Spring Court. Her mom went to the Spring Court. So it
Mhm.
definitely happened there. But could it not be another High Lord? Now, we know when Gwen is conceived and born, it's during the Under the Mountain events. She's
Yeah.
like 26, I want to say, when Silver Flame starts. So that's a good halfway through Under the Mountain shit. But we have seen, literally in this scene, Amarantha let out a High Lord
Yeah.
for Calanmai. So it is possible she could have let one of the others out 1 year for whatever reason. If that
Interesting.
happened, my bet's on Baron because she's a redhead.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And hey, maybe who knows? Maybe we're gonna get some big plot twists where he actually knows Lucien is not his son, and this was like his revenge on his wife. And I don't know. That's pure speculation, but it's a possibility I want to point out.
Yeah.
But the bigger thing I want to talk about is what the fuck do all the other High Lords do for Calanmai? Because I don't think, I mean, as far as I remember, we've never seen it. I could be wrong. I want to say Rhys says they don't celebrate it in the Night Court.
So this is another that I have like big question marks for this portion
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Because and what's funny is when I started really going down the rabbit hole in my
Yeah.
brain, it really started taking away some of the devil's advocate stuff that I was using to kind of like fight for Tamlin in this portion.
Yeah.
Because why do I have this memory
I know what
of
you're gonna say.
like Rhys and Cassian and like all of them kind of like making fun of the Spring Court for being like very like antiquated.
Yep.
For still doing things that really did not need to happen, like learning that actually like Calanmai that you actually can like kind of still do, you can still celebrate it and do something for the earth, but like you don't need to fuck, you don't need to like kill a stag. Like I have this memory.
I think you're right. No. I think you're, and actually I want to say, because I was looking this up the other day on Reddit, and I think someone did bring that up actually. So I think you are correct.
Because I don't see Rhys doing this.
God, no.
Like
No.
this is not, and to me it kind of plays into this like idea of how completely caught up Tamlin gets in this like High Lord role. Like it feels like those kind of classic other fantasy stories where you have that one character who just keeps doing the same thing. They may not agree with it, but they keep doing it because they just think that's how it's done. I mean, we see this in America all the fucking time. And it takes one person being like, yeah, but like, have you ever thought about the fact that like you probably don't have to, that like there could be another way? Have you like even thought, you know, like there's always that moment in one of those books, right? Where you're just like, oh, I'd never even considered another way out. And so it just feels like this is like another one of like the stark differences between these two is that, and I do think it has a lot to do with kind of like the mom thing that you brought up last episode, where it's like Tamlin was brought up with a mother who loved someone so much that she was blinded and she just sort of like went along with things.
Right.
While Rhys was brought up with a mother who kind of just like was always charting a new path. And really, she only got saved because she happened to be the mate of someone, right? Because like her wings were going to get all fucked up, right? And then like Rhys's dad was like, wait, she's my mate. But like there was no love there, right?
No.
So Rhys is brought up with his mother who's kind of always been sort of like charting her own course. Like he was brought up knowing that you could always find potentially a different way to do something. And the thing is like Rhys really holds on to that and like and charts forward. Yes, I know Ariel and I keep saying like, or what we said in the beginning too, of like your upbringing only takes you so far, right? You can only use that as an excuse for so long. But it's just fascinating to me. Once we brought up this whole mom thing, it's like you really see the differences here.
Well, I think I just had a big like epiphany moment when you were talking about that. I wonder if what SJM is doing with this is showing the effects of, how do I phrase this? Like showing the effects of what happens to the children of different parental relationships,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have, and obviously this is not universal, but like
Right.
just it's these two examples,
Yeah.
right? You have Tamlin, whose mother was devout to her husband, right?
Oh,
To a
yeah.
fault.
To a
Like she was
fault.
blinded by love.
Yeah.
And even though Tamlin doesn't really, I don't think Tamlin loves his dad. I really
No.
don't. He loved
No.
his mom, but I don't think he loved his dad.
Yeah.
Because remember, these two men, Rhys and Tamlin, they both love their mothers.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
But he watches, I think because of both of them see their moms as the example,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So he watches his mom uphold his father and all the traditions, no matter how bad they are, that his dad continues, so he continues them.
Yeah.
Versus Rhys, who loves his mom just as much as Tamlin loves his mom, but Rhys's parents, while mated, were not in love.
Yeah.
And Rhys's mom broke a lot of rules because she knew those rules were corrupt.
Yeah.
Which put Rhys in a position to go, hey, guess what? I don't have to follow in my dad's footsteps. Because that's the commonality, I think, is both of their dads are pieces of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Both of their dads continue some horrific traditions. Like Rhys's dad is okay with the whole wing clipping of female Illyrians, right? Rhys says, not doing that shit. Like I'm outlawing it.
Yeah.
Whereas Tamlin, even though just like Rhys, he doesn't like his dad, he's like, okay, well, we're gonna continue the tithe because I have to.
Yeah.
And I think the key is their mothers.
Yeah. Yeah. I do too. And I mean, I think also it's the difference in how they view their mothers. Yes. I think Tamlin, he loved his mom, but I think he kind of like pitied her. Yeah. Because she was blinded by her love, and like he pitied that she wasn't really seeing like the truth, or that she would blindly, I think there's a level of that where that he's kind of probably like a little upset with his mom that she was so blinded, but he still loved her like in spite of that. And I think Rhys views his mom as kind of like a hero. Yeah. So it's a very different vibe. It's a very different feel.
It's weird that, and I think this is what you brought up earlier, this is where choice comes in, right? Yeah. It's weird then that Tamlin, despite hating his dad and probably pitying his mom, continues his dad's traditions.
It is.
And I think it goes back to, despite pitying his mom, he loved his mom. And it's this like, he didn't really have, and this is not an excuse, but he didn't have an example to follow of like, this is how you say no, really, and rebel.
Yeah.
So, I never thought, wow, that I'm so glad you brought up the mom. Yeah. Because I think that is, and hey, especially if we get a Tamlin redemption arc, I'm sure that's going to get discussed at least a little, if not
at least a little. So. Yeah. And it also just comes down, I think, to like overall just like courage. Yeah. Like I think Rhys has a lot of courage, and I don't think Tamlin does.
And, this is probably the one devil's advocate I'll pull out this episode. I think it's in a lot of ways easier to have courage when I'm talking reputation here. Yeah. When you don't have anything to lose in terms of your reputation. Like everyone assigned Rhys as the bad guy. Yeah. Like since day one, basically. Because the Night Court has always been the bad guy. Yeah. Whereas Tamlin has a lot to lose in regards to reputation. Yeah. So I get that. He could still choose to use his privilege. Yeah. So yeah. Speaking of which, shall we get into it?
Yeah, before we get to the biting of it all, there's this. So, right. So like Lucien brings her back. Right. Tells her what Calanmai is, which a lot of thoughts and questions. And then, she grumpily goes to bed, wakes back up, and like starts like kind of doing the classic like jealous girly thing, right? Where she like starts thinking about this girl touching Tamlin and all this stuff. And she has this, she goes through this thought process where she goes, it's a long one, so bear with me. She's like, I wondered whether she was glad to be chosen. Probably. She'd come to the hill of her own free will, and after all, Tamlin was a high lord, and it was a great honor. And I suppose Tamlin was handsome. Terribly handsome. Even though I couldn't see the upper part of his face, his eyes were fine, and his mouth beautifully curved and full. And then there was his body, which was... I hissed and stood. I'm sorry. This is a really brutal description of Tamlin after the description she had of Rhys. Like, to literally go...
God, yeah.
His eyes were fine.
Just fine.
His mouth beautifully curved and full. Oh my God. But like, this is a very brutal description.
After the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Like,
and like,
oh my
like
God.
It's like this kind of killed me when we read these chapters. I was like, this is a little...
You sure you like him?
Feyre? Right. Like, yeah. It feels like she's like searching, even though like that's like that would be deep subconscious, right? Because she is thinking about it in a way of just like, oh, like, God, like, yeah, he's, you know, handsome. And then when she thought about his body, like, it really gets her going, you know. And you could try to maybe do, you know, a gavel devil's advocate of like, she can't see the upper part of his face, like, sure.
Yeah.
But like, this just feels... it's a really rough comparison to have this description happen like right after our description of Rhys, and how almost every single sentence, even when he talks or anything, is just laced with like his sensual voice or his like his grace, his like strong, you know, like everything's tight and hot and you're just like, okay, this was like sexy. And this description of Tamlin is like, yeah, he's hot.
Yeah, he's fine. God, that I never thought about it from that perspective, and it's so telling. Yeah, it's so telling.
It is.
Oh my God. Well, one thing I want to actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to bring up before we get into like the biting stuff is she brings up, and Lucien does say earlier, you know, it's an honor to be chosen as the maiden. During Calamine, she says, you know, that girl was there for her own free will. Do we know that for a fact?
Yeah.
And here's why I ask. I believe Lucien when he says it's an honor, but it's considered an honor by Spring Court society, right? Mm-hmm. How much free will does a person have, right? If your society tells you, hey, this thing is an honor, you should go do it, right? And then it brings up some other questions, which like, look, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but like one thing I thought of is like, let's say they're having sex, Tamlin and the maiden, right? Whether this one or any of the others years past, and actually not just Tamlin, any of the High Lords of the Spring Court, right? And let's say partway through, she's not liking it. Is the High Lord going to stop? Yeah. Like it really opens up.
It does.
A massive Pandora's box into consent. And I think that's the point. Yeah. I do think that is the point of Calanmai getting brought up, and specifically at this part in the series, because it is I'm not a fan of Calanmai. Yeah. I'm really not. Yeah. You know, I think it just brings up the general question of power.
Totally. I mean, actually, even you saying that is making me realize, like, I'd never thought about this idea of how, like, these High Lords, I mean, I guess we'll just talk about Spring Court really right now. Yeah. They're going into this rite feeling a right to any woman's body.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't.
They're the one picking.
They're the one picking. And yes, it's this whole thing of that it's like their instincts choose, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's a very interesting way of looking at that, actually. And I don't think I'd ever really thought about, like, of course, Tamlin doesn't think what he's doing is really like that bad, because the way he was brought up with his dad, and in this idea of like, yeah, you're supposed to let yourself go to the magic. Like, yeah, you don't have any control. Like, of course he believes he has a right to do whatever he wants to do, like this evening. So like, it's interesting because the great right is starting to feel like a very uncomfortable wording.
Well, especially because I'm so glad you brought up the idea of right, the word right. But also, what role does Tamlin play in the Great Right? The hunter.
Yeah.
He is hunting.
Yeah.
And look, I know the women he's sleeping with are also Fae, right?
Yeah.
So in theory, they have powers too, but they're not necessarily high Fae,
Yeah.
meaning they don't necessarily have the amount of powers. I mean, they certainly don't because he's a High Lord.
Yeah.
And even if they did, it brings up, I think, just a lot of questions.
It absolutely does. And like, I'm, I said it in the spoiler free portion, but like, I'm really in this like magical mental fairyland of like, just, all the girls who want to be chosen, they all line up next to the cave. And these are all the people who want to consent are here. So he'll never go further than that line. He'll only stay, like that's like where like my little brain is just like, nope. That's what happens. Everyone's good. Everyone's consenting. But I mean, you bring up some like interesting points that there is no way that that's not purposeful on Sarah J. Maas's part.
Yeah. You know what's funny is if this were in the Night Court, right?
Oh.
And it were Rhys, I would actually be more inclined to believe that version. Right?
I would too.
Because we know Rhys would never do anything like that.
Yeah.
But Tamlin would. And I don't think purposely. I don't think he's like going in with the intention of raping women.
No,
like,
I don't think. No, not at all. Like, again, it goes back to what you and I have discussed of like deep down, I really do not believe that Tamlin is a villain. No. I believe that he is just extremely blind. Yeah. And is like willfully ignorant to certain things because that's just the way things have been. I mean, how many times have people in history been stopped by the statement of, well, that's just not how we do things? Like good meaning, like well-meaning people saying that to somebody of like, no, don't go to that protest. You're going to get hurt. No, don't do this thing. You're going to blah. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Tamlin is like just this perfect, like, example of like, honestly, kind of like, like white privilege, honestly.
Completely.
Of just like, but this is just how it is. And we just have to put our head down and do it.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of problems with that mentality.
So many problems, specifically when it comes to like the subject of sex. And like, let's be honest, like, I don't know if I doubt there's statistics on this because I don't know how you would get the statistics, but I would wager the vast majority of sexual assault, whether like rape or other forms of sexual assault or harassment for that matter, that are done by men, I don't think the men even know that it is sexual assault or harassment. And I think that's possibly where Tamlin, I mean, it is definitely sexual harassment because of the biting scene, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, I think that's a lot of where like the whole like Me Too movement and everything, like really, all of a sudden you start hearing people talking about like, oh, I can't make jokes in the workforce anymore. And you're like, no, bro, you just were doing really inappropriate jokes. If people are commenting on it now, that just means you should never have been making that joke in the first place.
Right. Well, I feel that's a good segue. So before we actually start talking about it, if you listen to the spoiler-free episode, I said I was saving my directing writing moment for this episode, and it's because it is the biting scene. Yep. And here's why. One, I love a challenge. Two, if you know my work as a writer-director, sexual consent and assault and things like that's actually like a really big part of my work. And I think that's why I would want to do the scene, because I would want, like, just thinking about, if you listen to our first half of the spoiler-free episode, it was a trying episode because we were having to not dive as deep into it as we wanted to because we couldn't spoil for new readers, right? Mm-hmm. And it would be the same challenge, right, with a film or TV adaptation of ACOTAR. Yes. Of like, how do you responsibly portray the scene while also not spoiling the fact that Tamlin's a piece of shit? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, it would be really hard. And to be honest, like, I'm actually not going to talk a ton about how I would do it because I frankly don't entirely know how I would do it. It's more of I would want to do it because I think that would be a really interesting challenge to do. I would play a lot with perspective, though, I think. I mean, obviously, it's all from Feyre's perspective, but I think, in film, there are certain camera angles that are used to convey power, right? Yeah. So, like, a lot of the time, if you're doing, like, a high-up angle, that is showing someone in a submissive position. If you're doing a lower angle, that's showing someone in a dominant position.
Yeah.
But I would be playing a lot with things like that to convey not only like what is obvious, like watching upon a first watch, but also like kind of doing that thing like we talked about like Fight Club, right? Like, you know, where you go back and you're watching it like, there was some subtle hints in the cinematography or the editing or soundtrack or whatever it is that really hinted, no, we're not supposed to be rooting for him in this scene, right? So let's get into it, man. On page 195, she's describing how Tamlin looks when he comes back into the manor. It says, his chest was painted with whorls of dark blue woad. That might be a typo on my part.
No,
Anyway,
no, that's what it says. Yeah.
Well, woad. And from the smudges in the paint, I knew exactly where he'd been touched. This is totally foreshadowing.
Hardcore.
Under the mountain.
100%.
Like with the Rhys's paint.
Rhys's paint.
And again, it's this mirroring, right? It's, you know, for Tamlin, it's part of the ritual, right? Like, I think that really is all it is. It's just part of this ritual.
Totally.
I mean, maybe it's to show everyone where he was touched. I'm not sure.
Maybe it's
if
like
that's like
proof.
The point of it in the ritual.
Maybe it can be like proof that like something happened.
I think that's a good point, because actually one thing I wanted to talk about, I think it was this episode, is how do they know the deed was done? Unless, you know, I think it is, like we talked about last episode, it is a big orgy and people can actually see it was done.
I mean, and also the whole thing of like when she even wakes up before she sees Tamlin, what ended up being my sound moment, the shuddering silence went through the house, and the hair in my arms arose as magic swept past me. I also think it's a whole like overall like magic vibe thing where I have a feeling that like once these kind of offerings are given up, like it just kind of happens. You know what I mean?
It's magical jizz
just going everywhere, spreading the seed.
Oh god. But what I think is so interesting, and we won't go into it now, we'll get into it when we get to the actual Under the Mountain scene, but there's a lot of discussion amongst the ACOTAR fandom about Rhys's paint on Feyre. And there's a lot of people who have a problem with it. I'm going to see what happens when we get there, obviously. I do not, because the point of the paint under the mountain on Feyre is to prove to her, hey, well, you were drunk on fairy wine. I only touched you on like your arms and your hips, I think, and nowhere else. Yeah. Right? So it's interesting that is getting brought into a scene that is like the most, as you put it, morally gray scene in terms of consent of this book. Yeah. Right? I thought that was really interesting.
Totally. No, yeah, I loved that moment too, because I was just kind of like, oh, well.
The other thing, okay. I think for me, what it comes down to, Feyre is not 100% consenting. Yeah. In this scene. Yeah. And I wrote in bold underlined letters, Feyre's not 100% consenting to what Tamlin is doing, which is the point of this scene. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I think the way that we're presented Tamlin in terms of like what his state of mind is on this night, at first it's through Lucien, right? Yeah. Because Lucien says to Feyre, like, that is not going to be the Tamlin, you know. And I can't remember the exact phrasing, but he says something about like, essentially the magic takes over. Yeah. Right? Like he says something like he won't even know his name, right?
Yeah, he won't even know his name. He's not going to be the fairy that you know. Like, right. It's not going to be him.
I don't buy that fully. I buy some of it. Mm-hmm. I don't buy it fully, because when Tamlin and Feyre run into each other in this hallway, he pushes her up against the wall. He tells her the maiden that he chose wanted it rough, but if he had chosen Feyre, he wouldn't have. Yeah. He wouldn't have done it roughly. He would have been gentle with her. Yeah. Meaning he has some control. Yeah. Right? So I'm not buying this whole narrative. I think Lucien believes this, but I'm not buying this whole narrative of Tamlin is completely drunk on magic, right? He is definitely somewhat, but he has enough faculties about him.
He's enough faculties, I think, is like the key phrase there.
Yes. Very key. I mean, it almost gets violent. Like when she tells him to let go, his claws punch out and embed into the wood above her head. That is a very dangerous situation. And it really reminds me of like these abusive guys who come home drunk and just and they blame it on whatever substance that they have taken, right? Now, there's nuance to the fact that he is the High Lord of the Spring Court. He's not, the magic is thrust upon him on Calamai.
Nice, good word choice.
Thank you. But then again, it goes back to what we talked about of like, he doesn't have to participate in Calamai.
Yeah.
And we actually get a hard confirmation of this in Mist and Fury.
Yeah.
Because the following Calamai, he doesn't. He has Lucien take his place.
Yeah.
Because he's so upset that Feyre is not there.
Yeah.
So he has choice in this.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this time it was just so stomach churning.
Yeah.
Reading this chapter.
Yeah.
Of no, he has way more choice and way more control than he's letting on.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
It is. And it's interesting as you were talking, it's sort of this, like, I started coming to this this like interesting thought of like, kind of when you were saying how like Lucien truly believes that like Tamlin doesn't have any like control. Right.
Yeah.
Because you're right. When he says this thing of like, I would have been gentle with you though. Like I would have had you, moaning my name, blah, blah, blah. Because it like kind of seems like Feyre enjoys hearing that. Right. But I think like overall, she's just like kind of uncomfortable. But anyway, it brings me to this headspace of like, it's kind of this idea of like, if you have been told that you will not, the magic will take over and just ride the wave. It goes back to kind of what we were already talking about in this chapter or in this episode of like, if you are like taught and told like to just ride the wave of the magic, ride the drug, and just like let your body like take over, you again believe that you have the right to just do fuck all. Right? Which actually really leads, it's a very interesting like hand-in-hand discussion of like what men are kind of sometimes told from a power dynamic standpoint, of like, oh, she says no, just keep trying harder. Right? Like this kind of idea of like you have the right or whatever. If a girl dresses,
you control her pleasure.
Yeah, if you see a girl dressed in a certain way in public, then you immediately have the right to X, Y, and Z. And so it's kind of interesting because if you are put in this place of power and pretty much told that you get this night of just whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Like it's icky to really think about because you're kind of, because like I agree. I think this statement is him kind of saying that he actually does have more control than people really like think that he does. And it's funny because I was actually kind of fighting Ariel kind of hard on this, you guys. And we ended up having a really beautiful conversation of kind of like breaking some of it down. It probably won't be in the pod, but it was just like a personal one-on-one moment. We really kind of set and went back and forth on some of this stuff. And she really kind of like turned my eyes a little bit towards this of just like, this is kind of like the danger of this idea of like, when you of these like excuses that you give people, like I think I wanted to go down the route of just like, it's just a fairy guy, like blah, 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 blah. But Ariel brought up like a really good point of just like this idea of having a right because, or excusing a way of acting because you were inebriated, excusing a way you were acting because, oh, she was flirting with me. Or like, it's just in that there's really actually not room for that. And I think this whole section right here, like really proves that.
I think you said it perfectly. And thank you for bringing that up and all the lovely things you said, because it's whether intentionally or not intentionally, I think I lean towards it's intentional on Mama Mass's part, and I think this goes to the idea of the stark contrast between Rhys and Tamlin, right? I think that is in a lot of ways the purposes that they serve, right? Like Tamlin, like we were saying before, he is the classic Prince Charming, traditional male, and Rhys is the handsome, dark guy who is presumed to be the bad guy, but is actually the most selfless. I would say, in a lot of ways, the most selfless character in the entire series,
Well,
right?
and like they're presumed to be bad because they just question a lot of things. Right? Like it
Exactly.
makes you
Yep.
think about like those high school romance movies where it's
Yep.
like you see like, oh, the kid who listens to metal, so he's probably like, dark and satanic and like blah 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 blah. But like really in reality, he's the one who like will stand up to the bully. He is the one
Yeah.
who like will fight for whatever. And so it's
Yep.
like, yeah.
Well, and then also going back to what you were saying about like kind of what the males are told, right?
Yeah.
I think that also in a way applies to Feyre in terms of like I have to wonder how like look, I do think she is into Tamlin at this point,
Yes.
like
Yes. Yes.
without a doubt. But this is a very confusing scene for her, right? In
Yeah.
terms of like she likes it but she doesn't. And
Yes.
I mean, we won't get into it too much because we talked about it a lot in the non-spoiler section, but so proud of our girl for how she stands up for herself. Like
Yeah.
big growth moment.
It's hard. It's a hard position.
Right.
Wouldn't have hated on her if she hadn't done anything. It's a hard
Oh,
situation that she was in. So I think it's
absolutely.
very cool.
But
Yeah.
like also you have to wonder like how the parts of her that does want this, right? How much is that coming from her and how much is it coming from these like sort of society, like what society has
Mm.
taught her, right? Of like, she knows she's romantically into him at this point.
Mm.
Like she
Mm.
hasn't got, I mean, I guess she is getting hard confirmation in this scene, right? That he's into her. And it's this thing I wonder of like, well, what if I lose out on my chance? Right? If
Yeah.
I say no, is he going to stop liking
Oh
me?
god.
Which is a very real position. And
Yeah.
also just like the power dynamics overall. We got to
Yeah.
remember this is not just first of all, she's a human, he's a fae. That's already a power dynamic. But not only is he a fae, he is the High Lord of the Spring Court. Like
Shapeshifter.
shapeshifter, she knows he is deadly. Even if there, like, let's say there's a world where she didn't want this at all, like there's a very real possibility if Feyre were not as she didn't have as much chutzpah as she does, she'd be afraid to say no.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's just a lot of, how do I put this? Like we talked about this I think last week. There's just a lot of manipulation going on with
Yes.
Tamlin. And it makes you really question how much of Feyre's feelings for Tamlin are actually real and how much is a manipulation from Tamlin to, because a big revelation I had last night. We'll talk more about this next week because I read ahead a little bit.
Mhm.
I think the whole mask thing, him wearing masks, it's a metaphor for he is masking who he really is.
Yeah.
He is a character of who he actually is without that mask.
Yeah.
So is it possible for Feyre to really love him if she's not seeing the real him?
Right.
Right?
Well, I mean, I think we almost get an answer to that in Mist and Fury because it kind of, I mean, like, yes, Tamlin is not the same after Under the Mountain. No one is
No.
the same after Under the Mountain. And I know, listeners, you've heard us already say this 25 bajillion times, but we will keep saying it. So, I don't know, take a hit of weed or take a shot or
Yeah.
take a shot of water every time we say that or something. I don't know. Just have fun with it because it's going to keep happening.
Oh,
It
yeah.
feels like when Tamlin is like not covered by the curse anymore and we're supposedly getting more of truly who he is, she can't love him. Like
Yeah.
she literally can't. So, I mean,
Yep.
I think we get a little bit of this answer, but like, I just think the combination of this biting scene and then getting into chapter 22 and the sort of aftermath discussion and kind of like all of these things, we're really getting the beginnings of this, like, I mean, and it's already been happening, but we're getting a more clear sign of the beginnings of this, like, gaslighting into this blind trust of Tamlin. And this sort
Yes.
of like excusing of certain behavior because he has her best interests at heart or whatever. Like
Which is what they always say.
yeah, we're really getting the beginnings of this sort of like, Yeah, that was kind of weird, but like it shows that he's like really into me. Like it's so like I feel like these two chapters as a reread are wildly rough because you're seeing baby girl slowly getting pulled into this trap. Like he's kind of already been
Yes.
laying down subconsciously, but he's been laying down this groundwork
Yeah.
to just kind of blindly trust him and just let him be. And like I think Calamai and then the response afterwards really fast tracks this, where Feyre
Yes.
kind of starts, I think, losing some of her actual survival mode that we love her for in the beginning of this book.
It's very and I'll probably say this again and again. It's very classic abuser behavior.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
This rereading actor has been both triggering and healing for me because I've seen a lot of instances with Feyre that I personally went through, and it was so hard in the moment recognizing it as abuse.
Yeah.
And actually I do want to talk about that more in the next chapter because I think there's some really prime examples of that. One thing I do want to bring up though before we get to the next chapter is because I know there will be some people who bring this up in comparison to the biting scene, and I want to make a very big distinction. A lot of people have, and we'll talk more in depth about this when we get there. I think a lot of people tend to compare the scene with the first time that Rhys kisses Feyre under the mountain. I've seen it before. I don't like it, and here's why. They are very different scenarios. The reason Rhys kisses Feyre without her consent, because let's be honest, she does not consent to that kiss, is because if he didn't, Amarantha would hurt, if not kill her. And it's because Tamlin fucked up, right? Tamlin tries to have sex with Feyre. Amarantha's around the corner. Rhys sees it, pushes him away, and starts making out with Feyre. And I'm pretty sure he even tells her it was to mask Tamlin's scent on you.
Yes.
So
it was.
I want to put it out there before I want to get ahead of it in case. Very different scenarios. And I'm pretty sure Rhys even says, that's not how I imagined our first kiss going down. I actually am not happy that that's how it had to happen.
Yeah, no, he was like mad about that.
Yes.
And he was, and it wasn't just to protect Feyre. He did it for Feyre because he also wanted to protect Tamlin because Tamlin was going to get completely like,
I know. No, I've seen it before, and it gets.
They are not even remotely the same thing.
No. But I knew. I want to put it out there.
Yeah,
in the event some people.
I'm glad you did
have that reaction because Tamlin has no reason to be doing this. Rhys was put into an unfortunate circumstance where he had to do it in order to save kind of two lives.
Also, I'm sorry, kissing someone and biting someone in the neck are completely different actions.
Yep.
Wildly different.
Yep.
Like, okay, no. If you don't have consent to kiss someone, you shouldn't. But like, this is a completely... That's such a wildly different scenario that I can't even begin. For those who aren't watching, I don't know what to do with my hands or my face or my hat or my...
I know.
Wow. Well, thank you for getting ahead of that, Ariel.
You're welcome. If it makes you feel better, I'm like profusely sweating right now because it makes me so angry.
Oh yeah,
when people compare it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Okay, breathe.
I was gonna say, like, I'm even trying to do the like bring out the devil's advocate gavel of like, okay, like how could they? And it's like, yeah, okay, like consent, okay, yes.
But when it's a life or death situation,
one is so obviously a show.
Yes.
This one, it's just Tamlin and Feyre in the hallway together. There's nobody else
on his property,
and he literally ends it with being like, "Don't disobey me again."
Okay,
fuck off.
Perfect segue, actually, into chapter 22. That fucking lunch.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and we're sorry. That fucking lunch. Okay, so let's talk about the quote on page 199. Feyre comes downstairs the next day for lunch. Before that, she has the bruise on her neck that Tamlin gave her, right? Which, been there, done that. Also have hidden it with a scarf.
Yeah. Spoons? Did you ever do the spoons?
Oh.
Did you ever do the spoons thing?
I don't know if I ever did the spoons. I think I learned about that after I was past my hickey days.
Yeah.
Those were consensual hickeys for the record.
Same.
Yeah. But unlike me, love Feyre. She's like, you know what? Not going to hide this shit with a scarf. I'm going to show it off, not as a flex, but as a look what you fucking did.
You fucking idiot. Yeah.
You beast.
You beast.
So she goes down to lunch where Lucien and Tamlin are, and Lucien sees the bruise and is like, what the fuck is that? And love her. She points her fork at Tamlin and is like, ask him, he fucking did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then this male,
my God,
has the fucking gall,
the audacity
to say on page 199, she seems to have a death wish. So if Feyre can't be bothered to listen to orders, then I can't be held accountable for the consequences. This is textbook victim blaming, like cut and dry. First off, okay, and yes, I know we talked about, I think last, the spoiler-free episode, she was told to stay in her bedroom until the morning. However, she knew the rite was over. Also, girl forgot to eat. Actually, didn't forget, she was sent to her room before she could eat dinner.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point too. I hadn't thought about that as well. Yeah.
Like, she needs some sustenance, especially after what she fucking saw at Calamai.
Yeah.
And that fucking Lucien running with her slung over his, like, she's hungry. This bitch is hungry. But just the fucking gall.
Yeah.
Just, like, and again, like we said, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think we've proven pretty well he had more of his faculties than he's letting on, right? For him to say, I can't be held accountable for the consequences. Like, my guy, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, this isn't just a Tamlin. This is to any man or any person for that matter who uses anything as an excuse like this to victim blame.
Yeah.
That just shows you're weak.
Yeah.
I have been drunk, high, what have you, God knows how many times in my life. I have never once thought to bite someone without their consent.
Yeah.
While under the influence of anything. Sorry, haven't. Like,
yeah.
Just.
Well, here's something fun. I have thought about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thinking and doing are very different things. Very different things.
Like, I feel like that further proves the point, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I definitely had some times freshman year when I was single. I had some thoughts and some feelings. Yeah. I didn't do it.
Right. I have too. We all have. But yeah, you stop at the thought.
Yeah.
Right? You stop at the thought because you know, hey, I have not asked that person for permission.
Yeah.
Right? So next we get into some real classic abuser behavior, I feel.
Yeah.
So she calls him fairy pigs, right? Which I love. Love that.
Love the painting of the fairy pigs. So good.
Tamlin laughs.
Because also just like, sorry, like Lucien's just like laughing this whole time too, which I think is like,
I know,
very interesting. It's like the one moment that I'm just like, but I have to admit, like, I can't tell if Lucien is laughing at the fact that Feyre is just like, fuck you, make him talk about it.
Yeah.
You know?
I would like to believe
that's what I would like to believe too. Yeah. That Lucien's just kind of like, haha, Tam, like, yeah, okay.
She loves giving him shit.
You got to bite the girl, but she's gonna
bite back.
She's gonna make everyone see that you did that. So there
I think
you
he's
are.
laughing at he's getting slapped around a little bit.
Yeah.
So Tamlin laughs at her calling them fairy pigs. And on page 200 it says, the Tamlin I knew had returned and it made me happy. This is really common in abusive relationships where the abusive partner will act out, but then they will show their good side, right? Reward. And we see this further in the next few sentences where he apologizes and gives her roses, right? Like it's kind of love bombing. Yeah. Right? Not kind of, it is love bombing, right? They give the reward and then later they take some more shit away, right? And it's what keeps a person in an abusive cycle. Yeah. Just with how inexperienced, I mean, first off, it's not like this is language that's exists in Prythian to begin with. So there's that. Even if it were, again, Feyre's 19.
Yeah.
Like, this is the age where you're really learning this shit. And it just makes sense why she wouldn't recognize it.
Oh my God. Yes, it absolutely makes sense that she would not recognize this at all because, hey, guess what? Most of us didn't the first time we read this fucking book. Yes, did some of
Exactly.
these moments give us a little bit of like, okay, like the biting moment, you're very torn, you're very back and forth because on one
Yes.
end, you're kind of aroused. On the other end, you're like, well, but it wasn't exactly like what we wanted from them. And
Yeah.
then this response that he makes back, I'll admit it, guys. I'll admit it. The first time I read this response, the first time I read this book, I was like, kind of weirdly a hot response. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It's kind of because he's just like, well, you know. But when you really dig and you really think about it, it's super icky. So,
Yep.
so yeah. So many of us, even if you maybe had like Tamlin wasn't your perfect, you still, I'm sorry, majority of us when we read this book, we glossed over a lot of this fucking shit.
Absolutely.
We were there with Feyre. You
Yeah.
know, we were there with her. So yeah, it makes complete sense that Feyre doesn't see any of this stuff because also every single thing that is happening to her right now is like wildly new. The fact
Yes.
that baby girl doesn't even have to worry about like feeding anybody. I mean, we are very quick to
Oh,
forget about what her life is in the beginning of this book. And so it's
very
like,
quick.
of course, she's not clocking any of this. Also, she doesn't know Faye. Like this could be, he could be the best of the Fae. Like she
That's
has
the
no
thing.
idea what is, because also what she's been taught by what the families that these people that the Fae have growing up, there's not a lot of compassion. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of stuff that gets kind of like glossed over. Like she is not, there is so much new here for her that like I've never blamed Feyre for not seeing these
No.
signs at all because it's just
No.
like, and yeah, like people talk about how she's like childish and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, she's fucking 19 where the majority of her life was her
Surviving. Yeah.
So yeah, no, she didn't really have time to think about the nuances of a romantic relationship. Like,
She probably thought she never would have a romantic
exactly.
relationship. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
Like
So this,
beyond a
yeah.
roll in the hay with Isaac.
Yeah. So this like whole world situation with Tamlin is like
So
wildly uncharted territory for her.
Completely. And that's on that.
I got really fired up there.
No, but I mean, I'm so every point you made was perfect.
That's why I keep her around, folks. She says that kind of stuff to me.
You know, one thing you brought up that actually David and I were talking about last night that I think is really important. I may have mentioned it before on the podcast. I can't remember. This is Sarah J. Maas's. If you haven't read any of her other two series, you won't know this, but if you have, you do. It's her only series that's from first person perspective.
Yep.
All of her other series are third person perspective. Yep. And actually a couple of the ACOTAR books also are. This is the only one that is first person.
Yeah. ACOTAR is a series, you mean?
Yes. Minus Silver Flames and some of Frost and Starlight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because of that, of course, we're not going to clock this shit the first read.
Right.
Because we are literally in her head.
We are with Feyre.
Yeah. If this was Throne of Glass, or if this was Crescent City, or if this was Silver Flames, right? For that matter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we'd have the same experience
that
we'd be having now. And I think, again, it goes back to Mama Maas's just amazing writing in her intentionality of the point of this book. And the point of this book is for someone to, I think it's really, and maybe this is my own bias, but like, I think this really is a book aside about it's part of the becoming of going through what you think is a good relationship for you, realizing it's a toxic relationship, which then leads you to figuring out, oh no, this other relationship is actually the good relationship that I was meant for, right? Yeah. I'm a big believer in failure. Right. And I'm not saying Feyre is a failure, but like, like the relationship is a failure, right? Yeah. Like this relationship fails in that it does not, Tamlin and Feyre don't make it, right?
Yeah.
It's the failures in life that lead us to the successes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I said the last episode, I don't know if Feyre and Rhys's relationship would have been what it becomes had she not first had a relationship with Tamlin.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there is a purpose in this. It does not excuse the abuse.
No.
But the abuse informs Feyre going forward in her life.
Yeah. I mean, I even like, as I'm realizing now as you're talking, like I actually weirdly feel like this series is almost like a bit of a love letter to the women who have been in abusive relationships.
Absolutely.
Because it's her way of being like, here, let me, all these people who said like, why didn't you get out when blah, blah, blah?
Yep.
Didn't you see the signs from the beginning? Didn't you whatever? This is her kind of little like, fuck you to those people of like, I'm going to get all of you guys to fall in love with this guy and not actually realize how big of a red flag he is. You know, unless you're one of those people who hated him from the beginning, which, you know, okay.
You're a rare one.
You're rare, but, you know, go off. But like, I honestly feel like it's like her love letter to those women of just, and how difficult it is to truly leave, like Feyre, and to notice what's happening to you, right? The only reason why Feyre finally starts noticing is like because of her forced separation to go have to be with Rhys to fulfill that bargain. Rhys's response for every time he would see her, and then the like one or two like actually abusive moments that physically abusive moments that Tamlin has. It's like I just think this whole series is kind of, or at least the first two books, I feel like are a little bit of her being like, I see you, and I'm gonna make the rest of the world see you too.
This is why I love this series so much, and I think, you know, I get why this book and this one, Thorns and Roses in particular, makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it's because of this.
Yeah,
but that's what makes it so important. It is absolutely like, again, as someone who's been through something very, very similar, like, you know, she gets sent away by Tamlin in this book. I've been through that too, where like the minute we broke up, I want to get back.
Yeah.
Like, it is very real and it's so deeply psychological.
Yeah.
And unless you have been through it, you do not get it.
Yeah.
You don't get it. And I think this really is Sarah J. Maas's plea to people who haven't been through it to understand what it's like. And it's her love letter to those who have been through it to be like, I see you. I hear you. This is for you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, you know, there's so many people who like kind of talk about how they feel like, you know, some of her language or sometimes the way like she constructs her stories are like, it's not very like complicated. Some I've had some people comment of that, like, you know, some of her stuff feels like a little childishly like written. And for me, it's like, I will take this like surprise deep meaning from a book over like wildly complicated plots. Like I'll take this. I will over that. You know,
because the psychology is so complicated.
It's very
you don't need complicated plot. If you want complicated plot, go read Throne of Glass.
Seriously.
Go read
Exactly. She'll give it to you. You want that? She did it. Go read Crescent City. Fuck.
Truly.
Like, damn.
But this is not this when you're talking about this sensitive and this complicated of a subject matter, we don't need the complicated plot.
No.
We need to be grounded. And I think she does an excellent job of that grounding. And also, I'm sorry, it does sometimes get complicated. Like,
it does. No, it absolutely does.
Reread Mist and Fury.
Well, like, no, but that's kind of the thing is like there are a lot of people who stop the series because of this book. Because they feel like it's really basic. They feel like, you know, and like I get that. Like I understand. But I think that's why, and it's I'm, you know, it's so funny I'm talking about this in the Serial Squad spoiler section, like preaching to the fucking choir here.
I know, right?
Like, get out your flags, team. Like, because that's what's so, and I think that's what's so difficult, I think, for us who are like fans of this entire series is that it's like, I understand why people feel that way about this first book. But I'm just always like, just keep going. Just keep going. And if you don't like it after you read Mist and Fury, okay, then this isn't the series for you. But you gotta go to the second book. Like, I feel like that's just my because it's like I don't feel like you can, and it's a pretty ballsy move on Sarah J. Maas's part, to be honest with you.
Which makes me respect the shit out of her even more.
Yeah.
Like, that
totally.
is such a risk. On
What
her
a move.
second series. Like,
what a move. Like,
and before her first was even done.
I know.
Like, she was still writing Throne of Glass when she started at ACOTAR. Like, I love her. Getting back to chapter 22. Okay, so I did want to talk about the dress.
Yes.
So
I know.
I have complicated feelings.
I'm sure.
Because as we talked about in Spoiler Free, I think this is a really naturally common thing in even healthy relationships. You know, we gave examples of like how we've done this with our partners, right?
Yeah.
Of like, you want to dress up
Get a little
for
gussied.
your person. Yeah, get a little gussied up.
Yeah.
That is great in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. In
this type of a relationship, it feels like a compromising of the self. Like, you know, I actually saw this great, I'll try and find this great TikTok. It was this guy reading Mist and Fury for the first time, like live reacting to it.
Oh.
And the part when Rhys gives her the pants and tunic, he like, I think he like throws the book across her and be like, you get her. You know she wants her pants and tunic, right? And like, look, that's not to say, I mean, like Feyre ends up wearing some gorgeous dresses that she loves for Rhys, right? Yeah. Like, I will never get over the Hewn City dress. Like,
that one she like had to wear.
But she also is like super into it when she's like there.
Yeah, but she like she had to wear it because that's just the style of Hewn City, and she had to help play the part. But yeah.
But also remember, Rhys, he's like, you don't have to come. And she's like, no, I want to come.
I want to come. Yeah.
In every sense. But here, you know, I'm not saying she doesn't want to wear the dress. She does very clearly make a choice to wear the dress. But even Alice clocks it. Like, she says, don't know if I should be pleased or worried, right?
Yeah.
And when Feyre does say, you know, don't worry, I'm going to still wear tunics and pants, Alice says, good that you aren't losing your common senses entirely then. Which then kind of makes you question, like, Alice, what do you know? Like,
yeah,
you know, you're also seeing some shit. So, and, you know, I think the reason I question this is, you know, Tamlin very much compliments her in the next scene. Says, you know, he says, like, you know, why would he miss the chance to show off a beautiful woman, things like that, and reiterates how beautiful she is. Which again, you know, that is it's not the
nice.
worst.
Yeah,
it's nice for sure, but it's this like after what we just went through, right? I think it feels like the love bombing.
Yeah,
right. Of he just victim blamed her. He gave her a gift to make up for it. So then what does she give him?
Yeah.
I'm going to dress up for you.
Yeah.
I think that's why it feels a little, I'm not going to say icky, but it's a little, ugh.
It feels a little icky. Like it is, again, it's so bizarre how like these moments that when you first read it, you're like, aw. Yeah. Cute. Yeah. And then when you reread, you're like, ugh, this is gross. This is just not. Because it does feel so bizarre that after this night, she decides, like, if you really sit and think about it, you're like, why did she decide, like, why? Because,
why this night?
Why now? And, and it's just because she took the bite night. She pick and chose what she wanted to really take from that night.
Yes.
Right?
And understandably so.
Yeah, which is, and it's kind of what I did in the spoiler free section of this night, where the main happy thing, if you were to only choose a happy thing from that to take, is that he clearly wants her.
Yes. Yes.
And so that she kind of took that and just sort of pushed everything else away. I mean, yeah, she's very like, you should see that you did this bite and stuff, but she's really not letting herself dig deeper in any of that, which honestly, totally kind of get in the situation that she's in, to be perfectly honest. But it's interesting because it's like, it feels very bizarre of like, this guy bit you, freaked you out, and then because you guys are like giggling about it and he's back to his normal self, you're going to put a dress on. Okay.
And going back to kind of what you're saying of like digging deep, right? Like she's already been digging deep with her family shit. So I don't think she has the capacity at this point in time to dig deep about what's going on with her and Tamlin, right? She's already processing all of her family stuff, which makes we brought this up in the spoiler-free episode, the part where she says on page 203, and I dared say that some kind of light had crept into my eyes, not my mother's or Nesta's eyes, mine.
Yeah.
I think this is so important, not just because of her obvious like healing journey, but I think this also just reinforces why she is going to Tamlin, right? I think it's really common for people, especially at this age, right? When you're on the cusp of adulthood and teenagehood, right? Like you're straddling both, to latch on to the first person who takes them away from their family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Especially when it's a family who doesn't appreciate them.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, you see this all the time, especially like with college age kids.
Yep.
Like, regardless if they have a good family or
Yeah.
not,
No.
like,
Yes.
it happens all the time. And
Yeah.
so I think that in the fact that she brings up her family in this specific moment, I think really, really reemphasizes that.
Yeah. And it's hard too, because this moment actually feels like she's like getting her own sense of like power.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like she is finally viewing herself as beautiful because they are her features.
Yes.
And that's why this whole situation with Tamlin is so sticky, and like why it's so difficult is that this space of her and Tamlin really helps Feyre kind of come to a particular sense of self, and
Yes.
a particular place of like confidence and stuff. And I think that's why, I mean, we've already said it countless times before, but it's like that's why it's like it's kind of easy for her to sort of push some of this bad stuff away, because it's like at the end of the day, right now, currently, he's done more for her, more good than bad for her. At least that's how she feels at this point. And so it's like it's this very weird thing where I think she groups this sense of self-power with Tamlin.
I think that is really common actually in abusive relationships, where I think a lot of people who are being abused end up finding a lot of their power by navigating the abuse, right? It doesn't make the abuse okay by any means.
No.
But like most people find their power during crisis, right? Or during the hard times, I should say. It really forges them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why it's so hard to untangle yourself from an abusive relationship, because like it's moments like these where Feyre is finding this powerful part of herself, whether it's realizing she's beautiful because she looks like herself rather than her family, or the moment when she bites back at Tamlin and is like, you did this. Like, you cannot argue that she is not powerful in those moments. She fucking is.
Yeah.
And I think it gives a lot of people the illusion that they have the power in the whole scenario, which isn't always true.
Yeah.
But also there is something to like feeling powerful within that, right? So
Totally.
I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's I think what I'm trying to say is I think a lot of survivors of abusive relationships find their power in those relationships and as they're leaving them. And sometimes it's in it, sometimes it's in hindsight. But Feyre, like, just because you're being abused by someone doesn't mean you aren't a powerful person.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, God. Yeah. No. No. No, no, no. You getting into a emotionally abusive, a physically abusive relationship does not mean that you are not a powerful person at all.
I think those are some of the most powerful people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but it's like I mean, again, just to go back to what we already said, like I think this book shows that it's like it can really happen to anybody.
Anyone.
It's just
truly,
so dependent on the situation and what's happening around you and the timing of things and your age and la 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 la. Like it can really happen like to anybody. So yeah. And then the painting. I have a lot of feelings about this moment. This chapter proves what I just said about how anyone can end up in one of these relationships, it proves to me that I very easily could have ended up in one of these relationships. Because the amount of mental back and forth that I do about this whole painting situation is insane to me. So it's like she paints this painting for him. She has the intention of giving it to him. And homie starts looking at all the other paintings around, which is like very vulnerable. And like,
it's all her biggest wounds.
It's all her biggest wounds. She literally says, like, here's all the horrors I've been leeching out of my body for like a couple months. And yes, she did like, it's not like these are all paintings that she has turned and he's walking around and turning them around. Like, yes, they are laid out. Sure. But it's just, she intentionally made this one for you. And you're going to go start digging through all of her other shit and choose another one.
Yep.
Like, it's so violating and like disrespectful to her intention.
Yep.
But then the other part of my brain is like, yeah, but she was probably never going to show those to him because they were very personal. And it is very beautiful that he could see himself and he can like see that they understand certain things. And he also did get to know her better by looking through some of these things. Yeah. And so it's like the crazy back and forth I have on this really like kind of, I felt very uncomfortable after reading this chapter because I was like, wow, I very easily could have been in a Feyre Tamlin relationship because I'm so wanting to fight for this moment being beautiful. But it's just, and I think that's what Sarah J. Maas does with most of the sweet moments. And those who are just listening, I did quotation marks around sweet. Like these quote unquote sweet moments with Tamlin and Feyre, there's always something that isn't just right. There's always something a little off in this one. And I don't know if it irks me so much because like I paint myself and like there's a lot of paintings I have that I have not been able to show my partner because they're really, really personal. And he's very respectful of my space. And we have a very like open conversation about sharing of art with each other. And so I think this just like really pisses me off.
I have pretty much the identical feelings that you expressed everything that I felt because I think we talked about this before. Art is just so vulnerable. Yeah. Right. And I think there's different levels of abusers, right? There are ones that definitely know what the fuck they're doing. And then there are ones that are like Tamlin, who I don't think he knows what he's doing. And I think he's the type of abuser who is abusing unknowingly to heal himself. Yes. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And the abuse that he enacts on Feyre is it's a consequence of his healing, right?
Yes. Wow. And I think yes, Ariel. Wow.
This scene was particularly triggering for me because I have experience with an abuser who co-opted other people's trauma through art to heal himself. And in my opinion, it's really fucked up. Yeah. On the surface level, Tamlin choosing the painting of Feyre's Woods, where the bulk of her trauma growing up occurred. Yeah. And not just growing up, I mean, recently by killing the first person she's ever killed, Andres, right? Super traumatic. She has nightmares about it. Yeah. I think on the surface, it seems like he's trying to and I do think he believes he's trying to understand her better. But he also says, like, he straight up says, the quote on page 207, he says, I had many lovers, females of noble birth, warriors, princesses, but they never understood what it was like, what it is like just for me to take care of my people, my lands. What scars are still there, what the bad days feel like. This reminds me of it, this being the painting, that I'm not alone. Which proves he's not just taking this painting to understand Feyre more. No. He's also taking it to feel seen.
Yeah.
And while I can't blame the impulse to want to do, because that's why we do go to art, right?
Yeah.
Like people view art to feel seen and
Yeah.
feel heard. He didn't think about the fact that she did not invite him to take that painting.
Yeah.
And it is a very traumatic scene
Yeah.
for her. That's selfish.
Yeah.
And that, I think, really embodies a lot of what Tamlin does with Feyre, right? Like,
Yeah.
he does these things for her well-being, right?
Yeah.
Or to make her happy, when in reality, he's just doing it for himself.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you fucking nailed it so hard. And I think you really hit on why this scene drives me insane, is that it is inherently selfish because Tamlin is making it entirely about himself.
Yeah.
Feyre is putting herself out there, and his way of showing that he appreciates it and loves it is by finding one that speaks more, that makes him feel less alone.
Yep.
Instead of like, I mean, in more of the phrasing, really. I feel like if he had just been like, well, and also he says like, no, I want this one. Not like, could I have this one?
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't even ask.
Right? I'm pretty sure. Like he says, that one, I want that one. And then she's like, are you sure? And he's like, I want it nonetheless. And it's like, even if he had just been like, could I have this one? And then if his response was like, it shows me that we share something. Like, it's a lot in the language.
Yes.
Everything of like, I've had many lovers. They've never understood me, what I have to do. I'm not alone. Me. Right?
Yep.
And it's like, I feel like it really took you kind of speaking in that way for me to really fully realize, like, actually, like, that's what it is. It's the selfishness of this scene. And he's disregarding how, like, vulnerable and intense, like, she is, you know, she is being in like, she's really putting a lot of herself out there. And he's sort of showing that he, like, understands, but, like, does he ever even really say, like, thank you for showing me this? Thank you for the painting. Like, I don't think any of those kinds of words come out, which is so funny because it's Sarah J. Maas. She's just putting it in from the beginning.
And if you think about it, it's fucked up on a whole nother level when you think about the fact that rather than taking the painting depicting her happiest moment in life, he takes the painting that was her most traumatic.
Yeah.
And it just, it shows... It goes back to that thing we were talking about a few episodes ago of Tamlin views Feyre as a project to fix.
Yeah.
And that is so gross.
Yeah. Well, and we get the sentence, the quote of all fucking quotes that ends up being such a foreshadowing for Mist and Fury, which is when she's like, what can I do? Sweet, sweet, sweet angel, innocent Feyre wants so badly to help. Get this mask off. Yeah. Just help in any way she can. You know, and she's like, am I a distraction? Like, do I need to leave? Like, all this stuff. And he says, no, I don't want you to live somewhere else. I want you here where I can look after you, where I can come home and know you're here, painting and safe, which is literal language that he uses against her in Mist and Fury. Ooh, when I first read this quote during this reread, I was like, holy incensed. God, this is literally exactly what he tries to do. I literally wrote, whoa, mantra. Like, this is exactly what he tries to do to her. And what's insane, to go along with the selfish thing that we just talked about, the next thing, he's like, I thought about sending you away at first. Part of me still thinks I should have. Maybe I was selfish. I couldn't bring myself to let you go. Like, oh my God, dude, stop fucking talking about yourself, bro. Like,
right.
Fuck.
But it's like, and I think this is why it's so hard to forgive Tamlin at this point, is like, he has these weird moments of self-awareness.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then just retracts it
Yeah.
And it's like, nope, never mind. Like, you're
Yeah.
staying. Yeah, these were rough chapters, man.
Dude.
Really, really rough.
Yeah.
Rougher than I think the Blue Fairy one, which I thought would be one of the worst.
Well, I mean, Blue Fairy is rough just because it's sad.
Yes.
This one is rough because we know it's just beginning.
Yeah.
It's just starting. This is just the start. And it's hard. And for her to give us such blatant language so early. No, I want where I can come home and know you're here, painting and safe, where I can look after you. Like, that is Mist and Fury. And it's just it's like painful because she slaps us with it so early on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these chapters were pretty brutal, and I fear it's only getting worse from here.
Is it bad I'm craving the Under the Mountain scenes?
Oh my
Because,
God.
like, in a weird way to me, that's less dark.
No,
That's way less dark.
absolutely, because we're talking about this is very sinister what we're discussing right now. It's very sinister because I almost wish that this was obviously premeditated by Tamlin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like his actions.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it would make it so much easier to talk about.
And also just like it's the impulse to just want to hate him fully.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But like because there is, and again, it's not to defend him, but like there is.
We're not defending Tamlin in this episode.
No. This is the full hate on Tamlin episode. But like I think this is something Sarah J. Maas does again, not just with the series, but with all of her series, is we as humans want things to be very black and white, right? We want a definitive good and a definitive evil. And when things are in the middle and they're very gray, it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Tamlin is he is, I would argue, in a lot of ways, possibly the most complicated character in ACOTAR.
Honestly.
Because of that. And again, that's why I think we're getting the redemption arc at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a rough ride. If we get it, it is going to be a rough ride.
It's not going to be fun.
No. I think it will be her most, again, assuming this is happening, I think it will be her most challenging, which will potentially make it possibly her best redemption arc of all of her series, right? Because unlike Nesta, like, Nesta's a bitch for a while, but like she's still Feyre's sister, right? Like, there's still some redeemable things about her. Same with the character from Throne of Glass and the character from Crescent City. I think she's going to do a redemption arc with. Tamlin, it's a lot. Like
it's just like, fuck, dude, you're a fucking idiot. Like it's I think that's like really what a lot of it is it's just like, bro, this maybe could have gone a little bit better for you.
A little.
And you just fucked it up so hard. Yeah. Well,
on that note.
So
next week's chapters, we're doing 23 through 24. We started reading ahead, and I have some very big questions about glamour magic in particular.
Serial Squad, your episodes are about to get really long because we're getting to the part in the book where it's really hard for us to talk to our spoiler-free friends, and it's going to be, there's a lot more to discuss with you guys. So your episodes are about to get longer, so enjoy.
Buckle up.
Because the next page count is only 11, and it's 2 chapters, but there's a lot to talk about from a spoiler perspective.
Yes.
Probably a lot of repeating from what we say in this chapter, but whatever.
Yeah. If you want other people to join the Serial Squad or just be introduced to ACOTAR and have some friends to read along with it, you can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, and encourage your friends to as well. We're brand new, so we're starting to get out there, and by rating and reviewing and subscribing, it really helps us get out to new listeners. So we can make our squad bigger. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Cauldron Save Us Pod. And if you want to pop in, say hi. We still want to hear about
the orgy question.
If you know the answer, we want to know. Or to any other questions we have at cauldronsavus@gmail.com. And that's it.
Thanks for sticking along, and as always, you're welcome.
And we're sorry. Bye, guys.
Bye.